Page Zayin. We're continuing with the mimer. Chachlili einayim miyayin veleben shinayim michalav. V'hinei kol zeh. Everything we've discussed so far, B'chinat ahavat olam, is the love, the worldly love. Shomrim ahavat olam ahavtanu. That's what we mean when we say before Shema, ahavat olam ahavtanu. Perush, ahavtanu. What does it mean? You, apart from what we say that we're supposed to gather this love, there's also that we say, you have loved us with worldly love. So what do we mean by that? Perush ahavtanu, that you have loved us, meaning that God has loved us with this love, means Hashem gave the power to this love to be engarbed in the psyche, in the soul. שהנפש יכולה, in the animal soul, שהנפש יכולה להיות כלי להגביל ולהלביש את האהבה הזו בתוכה ממש, להיות תוכה רצוף האהבה הזו. This love has the capacity to be introduced and integrated into the psyche itself. That's what's called tocha ratzuf ahava, integrated. Tocha ratzuf is really the verse that the Alter Rebbe uses in the Tanya to describe the type of love that impacts you when you're davening. Okay, that when you're davening, your heart becomes what do you call it? How do you say the ratzif? Paved. Like everything is paved is not it's because it's a street. I want it to be all the way around. There's a word for it.
Encircled.
No, because it's like you're laying the bricks all around you. Like everything is covered. I don't know the word. It's like paving, but it's what you do on the walls. Anyway, so your whole heart is encased in this love.
What happens if that doesn't happen?
It just takes time. It takes 20 years, 30 years, but it'll happen. But what we call the major love, the great love, the one that's not the result of our meditation, the result of our efforts, it is in the source of the soul, in the place where it's mined from, where the soul is excavated from. Because the part of Hashem is His people. Okay? So that you get just by virtue of being a Jew. That's what we call the divine soul, right? Divine soul. Ve'ani havaya lo shaniti ktiv. And it says about that part that it doesn't change. Okay? Shehu yitbarach lemala migeder almin ve'en aroch elav yitbarach klal afilu kamashal tipa miyam ukiyanus. And this part, this divine soul and its love, the major love, they come from the part of Hashem that is unchanging. And this part of Hashem that's unchanging is above all the worlds. It's not the same as the worlds. And it's a completely different thing. It's the unmoved mover, right? When the Greeks had an unmoved mover, so what they meant in a certain sense is that there's somebody who doesn't change. There's something that doesn't change. Where's the unmoved mover in Torah? We say that's the world of the kiseh, okay? Of the throne. The whole point of the throne is that somebody has the luxury of sitting down and everybody comes to him. He doesn't have to go anywhere. And the fact that he doesn't have to go anywhere, that's a sign of his royalty. That's a sign of his power. Because he doesn't have to move. So the world of the chair, the world of the throne, which in the end turns out just to be, it's not so high, it's just the world of creation. Okay? Already there's an element of unmovability, of immobility. And that's we talked about, it's interesting. How do you say nadlan? How do you say real estate in French? You know how to say immobilier.
All right.
Right?
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing. It's a concept that the earth is the immobile. And that's what they used to call it. So real estate, so in English you say real estate. I don't know exactly what they mean. It's probably also from French in some way. In Hebrew, you say the same thing as in French. What? That's both good. In Hebrew, you say the same thing as French. Nadlan means nichse de lo naide. and immobile or immovable possessions. So there's something about the earth, about the throne. The throne is the example above of the earth, that it doesn't move, that because of that it has value. It has a different value altogether than other things. But again, the idea is that it doesn't move. And this is more, God is more removed from the movability of the worlds than even if you would compare a drop out of the ocean. As much as a drop is just a small inkling of what all the waters of the oceans mean. The same thing saying like that the earth is immobile, or you have real estate and that's immobile, that's like a drop out of the ocean of understanding what it means that God is immovable. He's immutable. He can't be moved. שאם היות שהוא חלק קטן מאלף אלפי אלפים רבבות, עם כל זה שייך איזה ערך וייחוס במהותו הדומה לו, שגם מהות הטיפה היא מים כמו הים הגדול ממש, מה שאין כן אליו יתברך אין ההשתלשלות ארוך כלל. It says the water, when you take a drop of water and you compare it to the ocean, so you have some inkling of what the waters of the oceans are. In the end, the drop of water is still water. But when you say that God is immobile, He's immovable, He's immutable, He's unchanging, this aspect of Him, the higher aspect that's outside, removed from the world, to say that that's like the earth that doesn't move, to say it's like anything else that's not movable, is less than comparing a drop to the oceans. There's less of an understanding there of what it means that He's really immovable. So that's what we mean when we say to see what cannot be seen. Because everything that we see is what moves. We see change. But Ahava Rabbah, to reach this higher love, the love of the divine soul, means reaching a place in the consciousness which is very different than waking consciousness. It's you're able to see that which cannot be seen, that which doesn't move at all. And that's a big chiddush. And therefore the love that's taken from this immobility of God, it can't really be integrated into the soul. In other words, you can't live in a constant state through the animal soul, through the psyche, through your waking psyche. You can't live in a constant state of seeing this immobility. Rather, you grab it for a moment and then you lose it. And then you grab it for another moment and you lose it. The Rambam.
Why can you only see it for such small moments?
Why can you only see it? Okay, because it can't be integrated. To be integrated means I in my mind have trees integrated into my psyche. So whenever I see a tree, I can look at a tree for a really long time and I can continue to see a tree. Even though, theoretically, if I try to fixate on a tree, I will eventually lose my focus on it. I will eventually lose my recognition of it if it was just for my eyes. But my nefesh, my psyche, recognizes the tree at any moment. So because of that, because I have recognition, de'ah, and I have knowledge of it, which really here in this case is akara, recognition, because of that I can continue to recognize it for as long as I want. But when it comes to this immobility, this unmovability of God, I can't integrate it fully. So if I try to fixate on it for more than a moment, I lose it. So I have a run and return with it. And the parable that the Maimonides gives for this at the beginning of the Moreh Nevuchim, we've mentioned this a lot of times, is that it's like a person walking in pitch dark in the middle of the night in the open field, and suddenly there's a lightning strike. And when the lightning lights up the sky for a split second, he sees where he is. And then it's gone again. He's back in pitch darkness. So that's how you see this immobility. That's how you can see this unseeable. For only a moment, it's a lightning strike. Rambam continues there to say that Moshe Rabbeinu, he was like a person walking in the pitch darkness, but there's constant lightning all the time. So he sees all the time. So what is he trying to say? He's trying to say he's not walking in the daylight. Nobody in a physical body can walk in the daylight. It can't just be because it can't be integrated. What he's saying is that by Moshe Rabbeinu, it's so quick. There's so many lightning strikes that it's as if he's walking in daylight, but he's not walking in daylight still. Because lo yira'ani ha'adam v'chai, because man cannot see me and while he's alive, at least in this world. Okay. So the love that's taken from this aspect cannot be integrated fully into the soul, into the psyche. ואין הנפש יכולה להגבילה אלא בבחינה מסותרת והיא באה לידי גילוי בבחינת בכל מאודיך. So what is the process by which I come to see it once in a while? That's called bechol meodecha. When I do things above and beyond my abilities. Okay? When I go above and beyond, that's like the lightning strike. At that moment, I'll see something that I was unable to see before. I always have a question about myself, whether I'm imagining things or whether, because I don't do very much meodecha. I don't know if I've ever done it. It's written in Chassidus many times that you have to do meodecha. You have to have some measure of self-sacrifice to see this immobile aspect of Hashem. And so I always wonder, is what I think I'm seeing real, or is it just my imagination? my conclusion is usually that it's my imagination. I'm just imagining that I can see it, but I can't really see it.
What is it you see?
That's exactly the problem. I don't see it. I sense it. I don't really see it. I mean, I can try to see it, but I think I'm playing a game from what I know about computers, from what I know about technology. It's not the real thing. It's just it's an example of it, but it's not the thing itself. I think that if you saw it for a moment, it would be a completely different experience. It's very strange. There was some point when I was in Hebrew U, that I for a long time wanted to meet somebody who had experiences of different states of consciousness. And I know that one of the things that brings this on is all kinds of South American hallucinogenics. Mescaline, which is not but peyote and ayahuasca and all those. So this was 30 years ago. So there's this professor there who taught a class on this. It was the first time I ever saw him. Suddenly, I think my third year, suddenly saw him.
When were you in? Why you?
I was doing my master's in history of science. So, so I took his course. I thought I audited it because I didn't have time to really put in any time into it, but I wanted to hear it. So I go in and I hear it, and it's really interesting. He's got all these movies, and he shows you, and a lot of stuff that clicked suddenly, and stuff this and this. When you see the actual performance of these rituals, and a lot of stuff clicks. Until then, the only thing I had seen was Terence McKenna, was the guy who studied this the most. I don't know if he's still alive, probably is, and maybe he's not already. He should be very old. And there was a guy called Carlos Castaneda in America, who was actually a professor also in the University of California system. I don't know where exactly. And he wrote these books on a guy called Don Carlos, something like that, who was like the big master of these traditions. Okay. And he goes down to Mexico to meet him, and he takes all this stuff. So the big letdown for a lot of people was that at some point somebody interviewed Castaneda and asked him, so where were your experiences? And suddenly he says, I've never touched any of these hallucinogenics. In fact, I've never done any drugs. I've never done anything. So what are you writing about? You've never had the experience. And I don't know why I knew that at the time, but I asked this professor, so which rituals did you take part in? Like, what drugs did you take? And he said, I don't touch any of these things. I just study them.
Right, because he doesn't want to get fired.
I don't know. No, he doesn't have to. Nobody has to. Oh, nobody would fire him over it if it's this. It was a little bit like the Stevens experiment that I told you about with curare. How do you say?
Yeah.
How do you say that word?
Curare. I think so.
Okay. You've never seen the substance itself.
I may have.
Oh yeah.
I may have. It may have used some of it as a medicine. Maybe. I don't remember.
Okay. So he wasn't afraid. He took it, or somebody took it in his lab, and he doesn't say who it was. I think it was him. He doesn't say in the paper which one of the four of them took it. He says two of them did. Two of them did, and two of them studied. So it makes sense that he was. In any case, so about these things also, it's the same thing. I don't know if I've ever had an experience of Ahava Rabbah. I wish I could report and say, yes, this is what it's like. But I don't know. So have I ever seen what cannot be seen? On the other hand, Chassidus gives you such strong and powerful metaphors to understand these things that in a certain sense, maybe this is the thing that's missing, that the metaphor in Hebrew, the mashal, contains the nimshal, unlike the analogy in English. I mean, the whole point of, and this is something the Rebbe discussed a lot, of giving metaphors, real metaphors in Torah, is that the metaphor itself contains what it signifies. The signifier contains the signified. So at some level, it might be that if you're able to understand the metaphor fully, you're already experiencing exactly the same thing, even though you came to it through a different route. Though you had to have it packaged in a different way from for you. You couldn't come to the full experience, but you came to it through some packaging of that full experience, which is sort of like the new mRNA vaccination, right? Because what are you doing? You're throwing the mRNA into the body. Normally, no cell would pick it up. Why would a cell transport a piece of mRNA floating through the blood into itself? No cell would do that in its right mind. So you package it. So you put the mRNA inside a lipid packaging, and it enters the cells pretty easily because the cells they love fats. Almost any fat they'll take inside. It's a good thing that
what happens when it gets there is a different question.
Anything different than anything else happens. Okay. So now we have these two, and understandably he doesn't talk so much, I think, about what the experience of Ahava Rabbah is. It's just that it's seeing the unseeable. It's seeing that which doesn't move. והנה ההפרש בין אהבת עולם לאהבה רבה הוא כי אהבת עולם הבאה מחמת התבוננות ועומק מחשבתו יש לה הפסק. שאם לבבו פונה לדברים אחרים וטרוד במחשבתו בעסקי עולם, אזי חולפת ועוברת ממנו. The problem even with being integrated is that the moment that you stop thinking about this, it's gone. So even though it's integrated into you, the worldly love, and you can always reignite it, but it's not, it requires your consciousness to have it. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That actually answers my question. מה שאין כן אהבה רבה שבשורש נפשו ממקור חצבה אין לה הפסק. But the major love, the love that comes from the divine soul, is not dependent on your consciousness. So really, it has no end. If you experience it, it doesn't go away because you took your mind off of it. So I guess that answers my question. Because if I have any inkling of what the major love is, and through this packaging that I talked about, a metaphor, when I stop thinking of the metaphor, it's gone. So I don't have it all the time. That's for sure. So it's not really Ahava Rabbah. It's not really the major love. The major love is that if you've achieved it once, if you've seen it, that's it. That's how you'll see the world from now on. You will always see the unseeable.
You said it comes and goes.
For us, it comes and goes because it wasn't integrated fully. It wasn't not integrated. It wasn't truly revealed. It's not daylight, I guess. Maybe it's not the right metaphor then. Could be that the metaphor of the lightning is not the right metaphor. The idea here is somehow that you have it all the time. I'm not sure that it's not the right metaphor because he may be talking here about in and of itself, not how it registers for you, not how you perceive it. That in and of itself, it's always there. But it could be that for some reason you can't experience it all the time. But going back to the Sikha that you mentioned that you read on Shabbos, or you read the synopsis of, the Rebbe said about himself that when I studied in university, my mind was still entirely on God. Even when I was in the middle of a class, or taking a test, or whatever it was. On the other hand, if other people will go to university, so when they'll be davening, they'll be with Hashem, but hopefully. But when they're not, their mind is going to be elsewhere. And that's why he said, a yeshiva bocher should not go study secular studies. Why? Because if he's already dedicating the best years of his life to studying Torah, he doesn't have the luxury of diverting his mind from time to time even to other things. And if he does that, then he's missing the full impact of his learning. And the reason being because he doesn't have Ahavah Rabbah, he only has Ahavat Olam. He doesn't have the major love, he only has the minor love. Masha'en ken Ahavah Rabbah, but the major love, שבשורש נפשו ממקור חוצבה, אין לה הפסק. It has no end. שגם אם לבבו פונה לדברים אחרים, even if his heart is now turned to other things. הרי אין בזה לעומת זה, להיות לעומת האהבה הזאת להטרידה ולהפסיקה. There's nothing contradicting this love. It's like it has free reign. So nothing can really take his mind off of this love. ולזאת תישאר האהבה הזו בבחינת רשימו. להיות זיכרונה תקועה בליבו בעל טעימות עולם ועץ. So he says also, I think he does go back to this, that even when your mind is not on it, you always have a reshimu. You always have a residue, an impression from it that resides in your heart. So I'm not 100% sure that it means that your consciousness is constantly filled with this love. Again, it probably is not connected to consciousness at all in the first place, because it says it's not integrated into your consciousness. It's not like you recognize something. It's just there all the time, as a residue at least, or impression. Oh, so he says here, but so what is he really saying? He's saying since it's called concealed love, what he explained in the Tanya is that this love always exists in the heart. It's always there. The question is whether it's revealed. So here I do go back to I know that it's the right mashal. The right mashal is what the Rambam says, because the lightning, all it does is reveal what's there anyway. The lightning doesn't create what you see when it strikes. Mm-hmm. The lightning just reveals it. So it is the right mashal. Again, the point is that regular love has to change you. It integrates into you. It changes the way you see things. But this love, the higher love, doesn't change you. It just is revealed. It was always there. It's always there at all, but it's not revealed. So it is the right mashal. In other words, even the person who is like a Rebbe, he's completely aware of this major love of Ahavah Rabbah, he still has to reveal it. At some level, he still has to reveal it because it's hidden, it's concealed. It could be that for him it's 80% revealed. 80% of the time it's revealed. But there are some times that he needs to reveal it. But the point is that it doesn't need to change him, or you don't have to get more of it. It's always there. You just have to reveal it. It's an action of He'elem v'gilui, concealment and revelation, versus the etzem v'itpashtut, the extension that's in the lower type of love, the worldly love. How do you bring it to revelation? So he says the way to reveal this is when you learn Torah. The learning Torah itself is the act that reveals this higher love. Because Torah is called wine. About love it says that God saw the light and it was good. The light was, as we saw last week, was hidden, concealed inside the Torah, but really archived. It's not really concealed. Lignoz is like to archive it, to put it into the Torah. And we said that Reb Levi Yitzchak Berditchev used to call Ahava, the 4 letters of Ahava, Or HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the light of the Almighty. We said that this is the light that was in the first 3 days of creation, before the sun was created. And when this light comes in, which is the light in the Torah, that's called the wine of the Torah, yatasod. What comes out is the secret. And the secret is Or Ahava Ganuz Me'elem El Hagilui. And that's the revelations. This mimer really fills in, or continues rather, from where we ended last week. Okay? It's exactly the same topic. להיות אצלו גילוי אהבה רבה מושרשת בשורש נפשו במקור חוצביו בחינת בכל מאודיך ועל זה נאמר פותח את ידיך. And that's what it means when we say that Hashem opens his hands. Why is it when he opens his hand? Let me just, before we continue into this topic, just add that as the days go on, and we learn this again and again, I feel more and more that if I was writing an academic article about the difference between Torah Or and Likutei Torah, what I would start doing is looking at the years. Because it seems to me that these articles, these Maimarim, essays, are all from the first years after Samech Beis. So 1801, 1802, 1803, we've seen all the way to 1804. We haven't seen any later. So I'm feeling that these are from the earlier years, and that Likutei Torah is from the later years, from 1806 and on, 1807. I have to check it. It's the theory that's starting to... Why am I building this theory in my mind?
Someone said he did that deliberately?
So what am I thinking that the deliberately here is? That in general, in the first years, he used more the distinction between revelation and concealment, Helem ve'gilui, and etzem v'itpashtut, and essence and its extension. And in the later years, he used more the sovev and memale language. He used more the surrounding light and internalized light. They mean the same thing, but obviously if he has two different sets of metaphors for what he wants to explain, his thought also went through some kind of change, meaning some kind of development, that he thought that the language of Likutei Torah might be better than or different at least, conveying something different than the language that he's using mostly here. But what we've seen so far in Torah Or this year is that almost everything has been Helem ve'gilui and etzem v'itpashtut. Almost everything has been these two pairs of revelation, concealment, and extension, or no change and change. And in Likutei Torah from last year, I remember that almost everything we saw was Sovev and Memale.
Right.
So it seems that this might be the distinction, and that would mean why this book is called Torah Or. Because what did we just hear? We just heard that Torah Or means that there's light in the Torah. Which light? It's the light that was archived in the Torah, the light from the first 3 days of creation. And that's what allows the revelation. So I don't know if we have time or we don't.
No, I think we should go.
Should go now. Okay. So we'll continue with...
Tomorrow?
What?
Can you run early
Yeah.
tomorrow?
So Potech et Yedecha will start tomorrow with this whole thing. But this is very interesting. This could be the reason why this is called Torah Or.
Well, everything has a reason, no?
Ken, and they don't write anywhere. But somebody who knew the contents gave it the name. I don't know if the Alter Rebbe gave
I
it.
wanted you to discover it for yourself.
Obviously, it's all very interesting.